We begin with the war in Gaza. The United States is making a major push to pause fighting in the Strip, with diplomatic efforts taking place both in the region and at the United Nations. The UN Security Council endorsed a ceasefire proposal for Gaza on Monday, and it's the first time the Council has passed a resolution demanding a stop in fighting after 8 months of war. The resolution urges both Hamas and Israel to fully and quickly implement the three-phase plan. 14 countries voted in favour and Russia abstained. A US ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, says the resolution shows Hamas that the international community is united.
Colleagues, today this Council sent a clear message to Hamas. Accept the ceasefire deal on the table. Israel has already agreed to this deal, and the fighting could stop today if Hamas would do the same. I repeat, the fighting could stop today.
Linda Thomas-Greenfield there. Well, the vote came as the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is visiting the Middle East. It's the 8th time he's been to the region since the October the 7th attacks. Mr. Blinken is fiercely advocating for the ceasefire deal proposed by President Biden 10 days ago. As part of that effort, he's met the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Monday and has held talks in Jerusalem with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, for the latest, I spoke to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Yolande Knell, and we started by talking about the Security Council's endorsement of the ceasefire proposal.
Well, I mean, first of all, diplomatically, this was very significant. It's really strong international endorsement of that plan that was laid out by President Biden, a three-phase plan back on the 31st of May. Now, of course, that was being presented at the time as an Israeli plan. That's been the US position since. But, you know, on the ground, I don't think this is going to lead to a breakthrough at the moment, as much as we have the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, back in the region for his 8th tour since this war began. He's trying to push both sides into a full acceptance of this deal as he goes about his different meetings. But, you know, Israel, even in its response at the UN, its representative made clear that the country's military objective remains to dismantle Hamas's military capabilities in Gaza, as well as to bring the hostages home. And then you have Hamas. It's welcomed this vote, but at the same time, it's not given an official endorsement of it either. And, you know, Hamas has very much stuck to its position that it wants to have guarantees that there will be, as a result of any deal it signs up to, a full withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip, a full end to the war. That is not Israel's position.
And Yolande, as you mentioned, it's the first time that the Security Council has passed a resolution to stop the fighting. Could you remind us of what this plan actually entails, this ceasefire proposal?
Well, I mean, this is the most detailed plan that we've had. Back in March, there was a resolution that went through at the UN Security Council when the US abstained. But what we've had this time is its closest ally, the US, actually pushing this text through to very much reflect the text of President Biden in his 31st of May speech that came out with much fanfare. So the first phase would be for a 6-week truce where we'd see many of the Israeli hostages still held by Hamas in Gaza being returned home in return for an immediate truce and many Palestinian prisoners being released from Israeli jails. The problem comes more with phase 2 of the plan, where negotiations are supposed to continue for what is termed a permanent end to hostilities, with more of the hostages coming out at that stage, particularly the male soldiers who remain in captivity. And the problem really is getting from that phase 1 to phase 2. Hamas worries that Israel would walk away after phase 1. So that's really where regional partners come in to try to kind of give those guarantees. And Mr. Blinken, on his trip to this region, he's already been in Egypt. That's another country that's involved in mediations, acting as a go-between for Israel and Hamas. He's going to be in Jordan later in the day, but then he'll go to Qatar, which is another country which is involved in these mediation efforts.
That was Yolande Knell.